Ladies and gentlemen, today is a historic day in chess, and perhaps for all the wrong reasons. All eyes are on the Qatar Masters, a tournament being held in the Gulf, and it is round number 7 out of 9. Magnus Carlsen is on a comeback streak, ready to seize first place despite a rough start. Hikaru, meanwhile, has been having an exceptional tournament, and there are many 26 and 2700s battling. This is the round 7 recap where we're going to get into all the action, but before we do, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. My friends, you might know me as a happy, energetic guy who screams, "The Rook!" and entertains all of you. But today I'd like to speak about an issue that goes beyond the 64 squares. Mental health. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? Like the world was just throwing too many things your way at once? I have in my life at times. And sometimes you can talk about these issues with a friend or a family member. But if for whatever reason you can't, then therapy is an excellent choice to get things off your chest. I've gone to therapy several times in my life, and it gives you a comfortable and safe environment to talk about things when it feels like the walls are closing in and you've got too many issues that feel too colossal to tackle on your own. And BetterHelp was created to help you get connected to a licensed therapist and make that process as smooth as possible. Maybe there are no therapists in your area, or they're not in your insurance network. Or you just don't really feel comfortable with a one-on-one environment. You'd like to do things virtually or on voice. Well, on BetterHelp, all you have to do is fill out a questionnaire, and in 48 hours, you will be matched with a therapist. And if you do not like that therapist, you can switch at no additional cost to you. Think about it. You might spend hours every week doing chess puzzles and game review or going to the gym to build your brain or your muscles. But why don't we give mental health the same type of attention? Over 4 million people have used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. You know how this works already. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/GothamChess today. Now let's get back to the video. Thanks, sponsored Gotham. My friends, this was not planned. I was not trying to have the BetterHelp sponsor on a video about Magnus Carlsen losing a chess game. But let's jump into it. Magnus began with e4. His opponent for this game, yet another Indian. It is 7 games of action that he has played in Qatar, and 6 of these games have been against Indian players. The odd one out is a grandmaster from Kazakhstan named Alisher Suleymanov, and Alisher defeated Magnus in that game in the second round of this event. So the 20-somethings, the teenagers, the next generation is coming, and it really, for those of you that are uninitiated to the world of chess, this is a very rare occurrence that 2840, number 1, is playing 25 and 2600s every single day. Normally, top events in chess are closed events to the top 10 players, so it creates this bubble, and the 25 and 2600s, like Murali, for example, they don't get a chance to play against some of these players and get their rating points. So Murali starts with e5. We have knight f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5. This is the Spanish. The other day, we saw Magnus play this on the black side. Murali plays a6, bishop to a4, knight f6 attacking the pawn in the center, and now Magnus plays knight c3. That is a rare move. Knight c3 is a pretty big sideline. Generally, white is playing castles here. Or if white wants to get exotic, white is going to play pawn to d3, defending the pawn in the center, and then kind of mobilize these pieces a little bit later. The move knight c3 is a very, very rare move. And the reason for that is this knight doesn't belong on c3. Obviously, it's completely fine and the position is equal. But the point is that white wants to play c3 and d4, right? So now the bishop is stuck. So the bishop is going to get chased and potentially taken, which is not really what white normally wants. And white doesn't get to play c3, d4. Does Magnus not know how to play the Ruy Lopez? No, that's not the point. He's playing a sideline. Black plays b5. You notice he spent about 2 minutes. And then after bishop to b3, he plays bishop c5. This setup in the Spanish with b5 and bishop c5, as opposed to the traditional Spanish, which let's say is castles, bishop e7, rook e1, like the bishop is here. This is the closed Spanish. When you put the pawn on b5 and the bishop on c5 more aggressively, this is known as the Archangel, the archangel variation of the Ruy Lopez. It's, first of all, gangster name. Like, Archangel is just a super cool name for anything. You could name your kid Archangel. Like, if I name my kid Archangel, their full legal name would be Archangel, Gotham, Chess, Rosman. Because those names are on my passport. Knight d5 played by Magnus, and now we are actually really seeing the idea of the knight on b1. The knight on b1 is like an eagle taking flight after the McGregor-Khabib fight to try to get to Dylan Dennis and the Conor McGregor team when he jumped over the cage. If you don't know what I'm talking about, finish this video, go watch that. Super cool stuff. Don't condone violence, but that was very fun to watch. We're taking flight here to d5, and then we're going to play c3 and d4. That is what Magnus is trying to do. Murali plays d6. Spends 10 minutes, clearly uncomfortable, right? I mean, you don't spend 10 minutes on the 7th move of the game if you have it already memorized. So already a pretty major moment in this game where Magnus has come with an opening surprise, and we're going to see if Murali can respond. He plays d6, Magnus plays c3, he's trying to play d4, and we have bishop e6, another 13 minutes spent. All right, so if you're going to play like this, your light squares are going to be very weak. If you're going to play like this, that means you're going to get rid of your light squared bishop probably. So Magnus now can castle, but Black's idea here is that after here, I imagine he will take and try to go after this pawn. Then Magnus might play d4, pawn takes, and you gotta kind of fight these doubled pawns. It's not really clear who this benefits. I mean, I know Stockfish very confidently says white is better, but I'm not sure that's the end of the story. In any case, Magnus plays d4 in 7 minutes, so this move probably took them out of prep, and now Magnus has to consider either this, or he has to consider the lobster. It's a book reference. I don't read, but my wife does, so. I don't read not out of choice. I just don't have the attention span. I'm always on my phone. But I did recently read Trevor Noah's life story memoir. That was Born a Crime. Highly recommended. Great book. D4. Pawn takes. Now, if Murali moves his bishop, like let's say to a7, he will lose the game. Knight takes, queen takes, fork. Shockingly, he does not do that. If he did, he might need to enroll in BetterHelp. Knight e7. Now, something might confuse you here. Why did Magnus not block the check? Why did he move his king? Well, if he blocked the check, then Black would have taken, and then Black would have gone here, and there's actually no way to defend this pawn. You might say, yes, there is, Levy, queen to g5. Yeah, but that's short-lived. That's really not going to, this is just not a good position. It's actually, believe it or not, better to move the king. Why? Because the king is going to be safe on g2. This pawn's going to move, king's going to be safe. This bishop is a target. You don't need to trade that bishop, because this bishop can't really go anywhere. Magnus is going to play bishop g5. Right around here is when I woke up, okay? I woke up around here and I was like, oh, wow, Magnus is playing like Stockfish. And play like Stockfish he did when a couple of moves later he went h4. Now, apparently, the best move in this position was not queen d3. It was something like bishop g5 or a3. And actually, Stockfish was very impressed by king f1. I mean, it thought Magnus was a genius. But then Magnus went h4. And clearly, he's got very bad intentions here for Murali's king. Murali played h6, which simultaneously prevents anything from coming to g5 and stops that pawn. Magnus played h5, all right? So my man plays h4, h5. He's leaving his king here. He's going to bring his rook around this way. And Murali took the pawn. I mean, he's just a pawn up. So Magnus giving up the pawn in the center of the board, making an active gallop into the position with his rook. He has what we call compensation, but Black castling long, anticipating that over here there is nothing. A4 looks very scary, but believe it or not, you're not breaking in here, and Black is actually very quick to fire back on the A file. So very interesting to see, how is Magnus going to accomplish this? Well, he kicks out the bishop, and then he plays A4, so that now there is going to be a bishop hanging, but Murali just plays bishop to B6. So the only thing Magnus has going for him here is a 38-minute time advantage, which is a lot of time. He plays knight to D2. Rerouting the knight and potentially rotating the queen over. Murali plays rook e8, taking control of the e file, very nicely done. Magnus now takes on b5, opening the a file, and plays this move knight to e4. A nice idea, because after knight takes e4, you actually don't take this knight, you take this, and you threaten mate. And that would be very, very bad for Black. So knight e4, very, very tense position. Murali plays king to b7 with just 7 minutes remaining. Very tense moment here. Magnus looking to apply that pressure and win the game. Queen f3, lining up the queen on the same diagonal as Black's king. Murali defends with his own queen with 3 minutes and 47 seconds to go. Black now has 3 minutes and 47 seconds to make 18 moves. You have to get to the 40th move of the game to get that extra 30 minutes. That's the way chess time control works. Magnus is up 27 minutes on the clock. Very tense position. But having said the fact that it's tense, black is about to trade off a lot of pieces. If white plays a move just like bishop d2, black is going to go here, 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 and here. And soon, here. And you might have to trade the queens. So Magnus decides, you know what? I'm not sure about liquidating here. I don't want to trade too many pieces. Bishop takes h6. I'm going for the win. If pawn takes h6, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, and queen takes f6. And after bishop takes h6, if you play knight takes e4, I have rook e4. You can take my bishop, but then I take, and then I take. And if this, I have this, and I'm hitting you here. Bishop takes h6 is a very nice move. But suddenly, Magnus misses a one-move tactic. He played bishop takes h6, and he calculated pawn takes and knight takes. But I think he completely blanked on rook takes. And suddenly, the bishop is still hanging, and after rook takes e4, he just loses it. Remember, the idea was to remove the defender of the knight. But, oh my god, rook takes e4! And suddenly, Magnus is in the worst position because he gave up the rook for 2 knights. A completely uncharacteristic mistake. He was up 27 minutes on the clock. And suddenly, he thought for 9 minutes, and boom! He would have never played bishop takes h6, I don't think, if he saw rook takes e4, or maybe he underestimated it. I mean, like, again, I haven't had a chance to talk to the guy, but I'm not sure he would go for this because his next move following up, black just untangles. Black is now off of the diagonal with his king, and he slides the queen back to defend himself. It's not the most accurate move. The computer wants rook g8 or whatever, but queen b7 is a fantastic move. And suddenly, he's threatening this, and all black needs to do is trade queens, because in the endgame, 2 knights are going to beat a rook in most cases. So, bishop takes. Magnus grabs the pawn. Murali just plays c6. Look at this. He has 1 minute to go to make 12 moves. But unfortunately, for Magnus, there's not much to be done. Rook d1 defending, rook e6, but rook f8, an amazing defensive move, a counter-attacking move, but rook f6, that's it. Magnus doesn't trade, he plays g3, black has 5 moves to go, and a minute on the clock. Rook d3, knight c7, here comes black untangling with the knight and the bishop. Murali, rook g7 hitting the pawn, rook d5, rook g4. We've made the 40th move. The players now get an additional 30 minutes on the clock. Magnus's time hasn't added yet. There it is. Rook f4 played. He's going to lose this. Magnus does have a passed h-pawn, and black is only down to 1 pawn, but unfortunately, there is not much to be done here. And in this position, Magnus actually resigned. He resigned the game because his rook is threatened. He can get it out of danger, but black will go here, and let's say rook b4. Rook d2 check, king to e1, knight d3, rook f2, discover check, and I win your rook. Also, knight takes, right? So, rook b4 would not do it. And let's say I go all the way back here. Pretty sure there's just a checkmate net. Rook to d2 is an unstoppable checkmate. There's check and rook c2, but knight b2 is winning. And Magnus Carlsen just lost to Murali Karthikeyan. Murali is a 24-year-old, 2600 rated grandmaster from India. And he is now only the 2nd Indian grandmaster to ever defeat Magnus Carlsen when he was the world #1. 18 years ago in 2005, Magnus Carlsen lost to Pantala Harikrishna in the tournament for the young, it was like a young masters tournament. Everybody was like 15, 16 years old. Since he became world #1, Magnus has only ever lost to Vishwanathan Anand in classical chess. Some of you may remember Pragdananda defeated Magnus. I'm talking about classical chess. In classical chess, Murali becomes just the 2nd Indian grandmaster after Vishy Anand to defeat Magnus Carlsen when he's been world #1. That is an exceptional statistic. And now on the complete flip side, Magnus is below 2830 for the first time since 2017. It's now been 6.5 years since Magnus Elo was below 2,830. He has suffered 2 losses in this event to people rated 26 and 2,500. This is wild stuff. There's a lot of things at play here. There is the narrative of, is this the moonlight, right? The sunset of the Magnus Carlsen classical chess career. Is he going to focus primarily on rapid and blitz? Many people also think that that's just a stupid argument because, you know, he loses a couple of games and this narrative happens. More importantly, the other side of that discussion is, I think there's a ton of underrated people in the world. I think we don't get to see grandmasters like Murali, like Alisher, who defeated Magnus in this event, more often. I think in India and a lot of different countries where there's not an opportunity for these young guys to play tournaments against the top players, a lot of them are 100 to 150 points underrated, which is crazy, particularly in India. So amazing stuff, a crazy historic day today, and I've got 3 more games for you. So speaking of another superstar grandmaster from India, shout out to Gukesh, 2760. A couple of months ago, he was the number 1 ranked player in India. Now I think he's number 2. He slipped back under Vishayanand. His opponent, David Paravyan, also underrated guy in my opinion, probably should be like 2660. Very good player, rapid and blitz as well online. And yesterday he drew Hikaru. Knight takes f6. Gukesh goes for what's known as the Tartakower variation. Kind of interesting that he spent 5 minutes on move 3. Maybe this was a surprise for him. Like maybe Paravyan usually plays the advance or ED or F3. Like maybe Gukesh prepped the Caro and Knight D2 caught him off guard, right? So now he goes for the Tartakower. He spends even 5 minutes here. It's not that he doesn't know the opening. He just spent 5 minutes because he wanted to make sure that he knew what he was doing. C3, this is all theory. All of this has been played before, and there's this new edgy modern move, which is H5. It's the way that you defend your H7 pawn, and you try to march it forward at White's king. You also try to prevent White from playing knight to G3. Now, Paravyan castles into that, which is normal. Black plays H4. All of this has been played before. Now, Bishop F4, that's a weird move. I've normally seen H3. I've never seen this played in a way where you allow Black to execute the entire plan. So Bishop F4. Some of you may notice there's a tactic here. Rook takes E2, removing the defender of the bishop. Queen E2, Bishop F4. That does look very, very good, but then here. And you're going to lose your bishop or get checkmated. So very, very bad. So knight A6, and Gukesh plays this move H3 because that's literally Black's entire idea. Like, your position was designed to play H3, so he does. But immediately David puts his knight on G3, which is the square that pawn was defending. So very like interesting dynamic here where Paravyan basically says, you can go to H3, I'm cool with it. And remember, in all endgames, this is quite important. In all endgames, like let's say all these pieces get traded, White enjoys a very comfortable edge because Stockfish says it's zeros because, you know, it's 3,800 or whatever. But this pawn structure is very mobile. And I think the positions are much more pleasant to play. Now, admittedly, in that position, White would have just taken the pawn. So, you know, we still got to get there. But Bishop F8, and that pawn just kind of hangs out there for a little bit. And finally, Paravyan takes and just focuses on this little rectangle. Like, he doesn't touch anything here. He just has more pawns, and he's just going to slowly transfer pieces and potentially create some sort of attack. Like, his knight goes to the center. He puts doubled rooks. Like, very easy position to play for White. Bishop to G6, Gukesh defending his king. Rook G3, putting some pressure. And here Gukesh plays Queen D5. And I think both players knew what was about to happen. Paravyan sacrificed the rook on G6. What? Rook G, that looks so stupid. How could you possibly, right? But what? Huh? But Black's completely solid. Where's the follow-up? That doesn't work. That's just another. Well, David realizes he could sack the rook, and his position is so good, he can just go rook E3. There's no rush. That's crazy. Like, his position is so powerful, he could just very slowly and methodically improve and try to attack the king, try to rotate the rook. It's crazy. His position, it's just such a good position that he doesn't even have to rush in. Black plays B5 to stop the bishop from going to C4. Now A4. Oh my God. Knight C7, take. He takes the knight and he takes the pawn. And now he's got a pawn and a knight for a rook. And Gukesh has a huge weakness. And if the king goes this way, uh-oh, so the king is in dire straits. And if the bishop lands on this diagonal, the game is over. So Gukesh now has to do everything possible to try to not allow that to happen. Bishop c4, it does happen. He has to give up material. And Paravyan, very cool, very calm, just sends the game to an endgame where he's up a pawn. And he's not just up a pawn, he has 2 connected passed pawns. The game is completely over. This is not defendable. Gukesh has 3 versus 2 on one side, but watch how Paravyan does this. He just pushes his king, his knight, his rooks. He walks his king up to d3, keeps centralizing, and you just can't stop his pawns. Gukesh tries his best, but it's too little too late. d5, d6, b5, c6, b6, knight d5, and rather than even prolong it, Gukesh resigned. What a game by Paravyan. I mean, taking down 27-60, this is the opposite effect. This is the... Gukesh is definitely fairly rated because he plays a lot of tournaments versus the top 15. And Paravyan is... I mean, he probably should easily be 26-70 or something. This was just an amazing game by Paravyan. Nothing more to say. This beautiful game. I mean, oh my God. Gregory Kaidanov versus Jordan van Foreest. I think Gregory Kaidanov might be the oldest player in Qatar. Not like in the country, but I mean in this tournament. He is 64 years old. I don't even know that. I thought Greg Kaidanov was like 50. All right, he's a longtime American grandmaster, trainer of many young, talented players. I don't know him personally. I don't even know a huge amount about him other than the fact that he's been around top U.S. chess for like 25, 30 years. He might be the first or second oldest player playing in this tournament, and Jordan is like 20, all right? And he's 2,700, and he's played all the top guys. So this game was a semi-Slav, Miran semi-Slav, bishop e7. Very sharp line, b5. b4, provoking, you know, a knight move, and then giving Kaidanov the center to try to fire back at it later. Clearly, Jordan has not spent any time whatsoever. Castles, castles, e5, knight d7. All of this has been played before, queen b6. So now Jordan spends 25 minutes. I would imagine that it was because bishop e4 maybe isn't the main line. Maybe it's, but I don't know. Bishop e4 does look very natural because it prevents c5. So Jordan spends some time, maybe instead of playing rook c8 or a5 or knight b6, like he thought for a little bit, and he played queen to b6. But queen to b6 does a couple of things, right? It pressures this, it defends that, and it prepares c5. And you can play rook d8. But it does something very, very, very subtle. It stops doing something on b6 that it did on d8. Very subtle. Covering g5. Now that doesn't mean anything because knight g5 doesn't, you know, just bishop takes. But Kaidanov plays bishop g5, but okay, so what? Bishop g5, knight g5, pawn to h6. There's nothing there, right? So bishop g5 doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, which is why Jordan takes it. And Jordan van Foreest in this position gets Greek gifted. Bishop takes h7. Now, he saw that. He definitely just miscalculated. Bishop takes h7. Kaidanov spent 12 minutes calculating this. Take, knight takes g5. Now, the queen is coming here. If black goes king here, queen h5 is game over. It's just mate in a couple of moves. All right? If black goes to h8, it's also over. So, black's got to go forward. All right? Now, it's normally better to go here because if you go to h6, you're still going to get hit with the check. So, he goes to g6. And Kaidanov plays queen to g4. And, by the way, f4 also would have worked. So essentially, this is like a poker game. This is white saying, I'm calling your bluff, and black now has to show his cards. Queen to g4, f5 lashing out, and Kaidanov slides his queen back 1 square. Now black's king is out in the open. He plays queen takes pawn to try to trade the queen or put the queen on g4. And now, Kaidanov finds knight to e4 check, blocking the queen. The king goes there, check again to slide closer, and now rook d1. And anywhere the queen moves, I'm going to take on d7 with check, and I'm going to win the game. Queen takes e5, defends mate, takes, here, takes. You can't take like this because it's mate. You can't take like this because I win your queen. Jordan takes here, knight c5. Gregory Kaidanov is up a full knight. He's going here next. He's going here next. He's going to play h3 and bring the second rook into the game on d7. We have a trade. He brings the next rook. And in this position, Jordan van Foreest resigns. Resigned the game. Gregory Kaidanov, 64 years of age, and I'm not trying to use that as some sort of, you know, like an ageist kind of a thing, but let me tell you something right now. Playing like this at 64 is impressive. I'm 28, and I already have brain fog. All right, I can't imagine. This man is double my age and 8 more years, and he just took down one of the best players of, you know, of the next generation. Crazy. And all because Jordan just kind of, I don't know, didn't take this move too seriously. Queen b6. It's crazy how one move he thought on his own. Maybe he was hungover, I don't know. But he obviously knew the various ideas. He decided to play queen b6, and Kaidanov made him pay so fast. I mean, so fast. Unbelievable stuff. The last game that I have for you is a great one. This is, I'm highlighting Alua Nurmanova. She was on the Gotham Knights. Those of you that follow the Pro Chess League, she was our board 4. And since then, she has gained like 200 points. She has been destroying this tournament. She's scoring like 50% versus Grandmasters. And in this game, she had the black pieces versus an international master, 24-25. And I just want to highlight how to attack on opposite sides here. White plays Rook G1 in the Najdorf, which is this obscure sideline trying to play G4. Black tries to stop G4. We don't have to get into, like, look at this. Like, Rook back to H1, right? Now, White can't even castle, okay? But I'm not going to get into the specifics of why on earth people would do this. White is obviously going to castle queenside. Black, meanwhile, is going to castle kingside. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you attack in chess. This king is castled on this side. This king is castled on this side. When you are castled on opposite sides, the attacking possibilities double because white will throw the pawns and black will throw their pawns. And when you want to attack somebody successfully, you need to make sure the center is locked. If the center is open and pieces are able to open lines and transfer, it's going to make things a lot more complicated. Watch how in this game, black is the first one to start marching their pawns. White also tries to march, but black strikes first and instigates, sacrificing a pawn, very common in attacks to open up the position. Now e4, ripping open the center. The knight can come here. The bishop has its door open for the future. Very, very potent and powerful attacking chess. Knight c5. Bishop d4 trying to save that bishop, but black says, no, 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 no. Nope. We're not doing that. Queen c3, now f5, locking down more space in the center. The bishop takes the entire diagonal. Queen slides out of the way so that the rook can take back the knight. Take, take. King slides to defend the pawn on g6. And now take, take. And Alua knocks it all down. b5, opening this. This king is completely restricted by the pawn on a3. The queen, look at this sniper. Sniping through 2 pieces. Queen b2 is a mate. b4. B takes c4. Alua sacrifices the entire rook because queen b7, queen b2. So white can't take it. White sacrifices the bishop to try to trade the queens, but Alua zips over to the other side, and it's too little too late. She has too many pieces, and she ends this game in style with bishop takes f4 and the very cool, calm, and collected rook to f8. A sacrifice of a rook, an attack on the queen and the rook behind it, and you can't take because if the queen goes there, it takes its eye off of c1, and black has mate like this, all because of this pawn on a3, all because a couple of moves ago, she decided to play b6, a5, a4, and a3. You never know when you push flank pawns when you're attacking, and that pawn changed everything. A great game from her. Round 7 is in the books. Magnus is out of the contention for first place. It is absolutely unbelievable. It is unprecedented. And actually, Magnus in round 8 is playing Kaidanov. So we're going to see how that goes. We're going to see if Hikaru can continue his streak. He drew Parham Maksudlu this round. He needs to win at least one of the 2 last games to make a case for first place. That's all for me. You know the drill. Get out of here.